When you think of Greek mythology, what love stories come to mind? Maybe Cupid and Psyche, or Orpheus and Eurydice. But today, we're diving into one of the most famous, complex, and controversial tales of all time, the story of Hades and Persephone. This isn't just a romance. It's a story that explains the very cycle of life and death on Earth, the origin of our seasons. So, grab your toga and let's journey back to ancient Greece. Our story begins with two very different deities. First, we have Hades, the often misunderstood ruler of the underworld. He was the brother of Zeus and Poseidon, and while his brothers ruled the sky and the sea, Hades got the grim, shadowy realm of the dead. Because of this, he was often seen as dark and fearsome, and he rarely left his kingdom to visit the sunlit world above. On the other side, we have Persephone. She was the daughter of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, agriculture, and fertility. Persephone was the picture of youthful innocence, often depicted as a beautiful maiden, full of life and joy, spending her days in sunny meadows, picking flowers with her friends. Their paths were destined to cross in a way that would change the world forever. On one of his rare trips to the surface, Hades caught a glimpse of Persephone. For the lonely god who spent his eternity surrounded by shades, her radiant beauty and vibrant energy were like seeing the sun for the first time. He fell in love instantly and deeply. He knew he had to make her his queen. So, Hades went to his brother Zeus, the most powerful god of all, and asked for Persephone's hand in marriage. Now, Zeus was in a tricky spot. He didn't want to anger his powerful brother Hades, so he agreed to the marriage. But he also knew that Demeter would never, ever consent to her beloved daughter living in the dark, cold underworld. Demeter doted on Persephone. She was her whole world. So, instead of being direct, Zeus decided to help Hades with a plan, a controversial plan that would set the stage for one of mythology's most dramatic events, an abduction. Before Persephone could even scream for help, he swept her into his arms and descended back into the underworld, the earth closing up behind them as if nothing had ever happened. Above ground, chaos was brewing. Demeter heard her daughter's faint cries and rushed to find her, but Persephone was gone, frantic and filled with unimaginable grief. Demeter searched the entire earth for 9 days and 9 nights, carrying torches, not eating, not drinking, not resting. When she finally learned from Helios, the sun god who sees everything, that Hades had taken her daughter with Zeus's permission, her grief turned into a cold, hard rage. In her sorrow, Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, completely abandoned her duties. She cursed the earth, making it barren. The crops failed, seeds wouldn't sprout, and plants withered and died. The once green and fertile world became a desolate wasteland. Famine spread across the land, and humanity began to starve. The cries of mortals reached Mount Olympus, and the other gods grew alarmed. The very survival of humanity was at stake, and Zeus knew he had to act. Meanwhile, what was happening to Persephone down in the underworld? You might imagine a dark, terrifying prison, but the reality presented in the myth is much more nuanced. Hades, despite his fearsome reputation and the violent nature of his abduction, treated Persephone not as a captive, but as a queen. He showered her with respect and devotion. He built magnificent gardens for her, filled with strange and beautiful plants that could thrive in the gloom. He showed her a side of himself that no one else had ever seen, a lonely, solemn god who simply wanted companionship and love. He shared his power with her, making her the formidable and respected queen of the underworld, an equal ruler by his side. And what about Persephone? Initially, she was terrified and heartbroken, missing her mother and the sunlit world she knew. But as time went on, she began to see beyond Hades' grim exterior. She saw the weight of his responsibilities, the loneliness of his eternal duty. She began to understand him, and that understanding slowly blossomed into something more. She started to appreciate her role as queen, finding a new sense of power and purpose. In many versions of the myth, her feelings for Hades evolved into genuine affection and even love. She saw the true nature of the god, not just the king of the dead. Back on the surface, Zeus was under immense pressure. He finally sent Hermes, the messenger god, down to the underworld with a command for Hades. He must return Persephone to her mother. But there was a condition. Persephone could only return if she hadn't eaten any food from the underworld. This was an ancient law of the fates. Anyone who consumed the food of the underworld was bound to it forever. When Hermes arrived, Hades knew he couldn't openly defy Zeus. He agreed to let Persephone go. But before she left, he offered her something to eat: a few pomegranate seeds. Now, whether she ate them knowingly or was tricked is a major point of debate. Some say Hades cunningly offered her the sweet fruit, knowing it would bind her to him. Others say Persephone, having grown to love Hades and her role as queen, willingly ate the seeds, making a conscious choice to secure her return. Regardless of the reason, she ate them. Some versions say 3 seeds, others say 6. This one small act had huge consequences. Because she had tasted the food of the underworld, she could not leave forever. A compromise had to be reached. It was decided that Persephone would spend part of the year on Earth with her mother, Demeter, and the other part in the underworld with her husband, Hades. The number of seeds she ate determined how many months she would spend below. And this, my friends, is the mythological origin of the seasons. When Persephone returns to the surface each year, Demeter is so overjoyed to be reunited with her daughter that she blesses the earth with abundance. The flowers bloom, the crops grow, and the world is filled with warmth and life. This is what we call spring and summer. But when the time comes for Persephone to return to the underworld, Demeter grieves once more. The leaves fall from the trees, the air grows cold, and the earth becomes barren and dormant. This is our autumn and winter. The cycle of Persephone's journey between two worlds became the very rhythm of nature, a constant reminder of love, loss, and reunion. So, what are we to make of this ancient story today? It's far from a simple fairy tale. The modern interpretations are incredibly varied and often debated. On one hand, you can see it as a story of abduction and imprisonment, a violent act where a young woman was taken against her will and forced into a marriage, a clear example of patriarchal power dynamics common in Greek myths. From this perspective, Persephone is a tragic victim. But on the other hand, many see it as a powerful coming-of-age story, a genuine romance where Persephone evolves from an innocent maiden into a formidable queen. In this view, she wasn't just a passive pawn. She found her own strength and authority in the underworld, ruling alongside Hades as his equal. She chose to eat the pomegranate seeds, actively deciding her own fate and embracing her dual role as both the bringer of spring and the queen of the dead. This interpretation transforms her from a victim into a powerful figure who navigates two vastly different worlds. This story forces us to ask some really interesting questions, so I want to know what you think. Was Hades a villain who stole his bride, or was he a deeply misunderstood, lonely god who finally found love? Do you believe Persephone was a victim of circumstance, or did she grow to genuinely love Hades and willingly become his queen? Which interpretation of this incredible story do you prefer? Is it a tragedy, a romance, or a story of female empowerment? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your take on this fascinating myth. And if you enjoyed this journey into Greek mythology, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching.